and wander across the stage. Thanks very much for coming and seeing me today. As Gordon said, it's my third IrisCon. I was here last year and back in 2012 when I saw Mick for the first time, which was really moving to see him again. And real delight when Brian asked me if I wanted to come along today to present on the State of Cybersecurity Report version 2. I call this the extended play, though actually this is the unextended play. Originally, we did a report which we launched at Infosec Europe back in June, and then I did a slightly longer version, which became the extended play, but that was 45 minutes. Now I've had to go back to 30 minutes. Yeah, you just keep up with me. There's a lot of statistics coming up in the next 25 minutes or so do stick with me. Also, for anyone in the front row, I'd rather them just ahead, because I've been sitting there this morning, and some of you just got a head above a lectern, so it's a great view, isn't it? So, just a little bit on me. Works. No video in mine, you'll be glad to know. I've been in Infosecurity now for just almost 4 years, in about 2 or 3 weeks. I've been covering cybersecurity since 2008. A lot of people seem to remember me from my time at SC Magazine, which is nice. And I was also previously with 451. So the Cybersecurity Report, the idea of it is we get lots and lots of threat reports, as Gordon said. Anyone here who's worked in the media or worked in any kind of environment where you see vendor threat reports, you know how heavy they are. They come in, I think I had like 7 in one day a couple of days ago, and of course they're people they employ to promote them to them. Wonder why you don't write them up. It's like, because I'm like constantly. So, when I email people like Brian, so you got any views on these reports? And he says, is it trying to sell a product down? And I'm like, maybe. Is it by that company that ends with that? Dark, fire, web, safe, whatever. Wendy Nather's rule: never trust any company with those words in their name. And we started looking at these thoughts, and we thought, well, I wonder if we could do one ourselves that was actually going to be, maybe not such a broad spectrum of responses, but you can sort of say, we did this ourselves. We talked to people that we know, and that sort of thing. So we did the first one last year, and it's called we call it the State of Cybersecurity Report because it was, the first thing we thought of, and it's quite hard to come up with a new name. First one in 2018, we talked to 32 people, not particularly large sample, I'll be first to admit. And these were the numbers we got back. So 46% of the respondents were about GDPR as being the top finding, top trend in their perspective. We did a lot of the interviews, I would say, around the March, April time, in the run-up to launching at Infosec in June. So hence, GDPR was on a lot of people's radar at the time. And then you can see the other ones I won't run through because there's some other things coming up. So we thought it seemed really popular, actually. So let's do a second one, which we started in 2019, and we just called it version 2. Nothing too complicated. When you're trying to write a report like this, you go to industry and you say, I'm trying to do this. And a lot of people can be quite hesitant. They're like, well, what's this going to be for? Am I going to have to go on the record? Do I have to talk to you about this? Do I have to be quoted? And I don't know if I like this. Once you've done one, obviously, it's really easy. You just go, you remember that we did last year? Yeah. Can we do it again? Yeah, all right. And so this year I've got 60 people. About 6 weeks or so, between February and April. Now, we determined 31 distinct trends. If I picked one of you out, Tom Langford, and said, name me 31 things that are happening in cybersecurity right now, you wouldn't go, you'd probably name about 6, 31 trends. That's how broad we are as an industry now. That included 5 top trends, so they were the most prevalent and noted trends. 5 lower trends, like sort of 6 to 10, if you think about the top 10. And then 8 single response trends. The reason I put that in is I think it's interesting that something which is a trend, but only one person thought of that. So we're going to run through them. Just a couple of kind of previews. I did get asked what sort of people actually did get surveyed. I'm not keen on putting up a huge list of names because I don't want that to be about who was interviewed. I want it to be more about the trends. But these are kind of the job titles, so it's kind of a lot of company people. I was also asked on a previous presentation who were surveyed and what the kind of balance was. As you see, it's a little imbalance. A lot of private sector people, which, there we go. Maybe if we do this again, we'll do a bit more private, a bit more public and a bit more third sector. But VC, legal, association, analysts, etc. So this is top 5. I'm going to go through this slightly faster because there's a second piece of research that I want to focus on a little bit more. Top finding, only 35%, bear in mind, that's the spread, those 31 trends, was product problems. And these kind of were the breakdown of reasons why. So you've got more technology than problems. One quote we've actually got in the report is like there's like 26 solutions for 16 problems or something like that. Yeah, so the solutions are outweighing the actual issues. Detection issues, vulnerability management, just, heard about patching just now. Too much legacy technology. There's not much you can do about that. Number 2 is the human factor. Great talk by Emma this morning. I know Jenny's coming up sort of after me, as it were, after the break. Human factor takes into consideration things like usability, empathy. Obviously, upskilling is quite an interesting one. How do we get people? We get people in, but do we then push them up through the ranks to actually get them to the level that they can then get them into a senior position? Social engineering, weak versus strongest link. We could be another entire day talking about that one. As I said, number 1 last year was compliance. And when I was actually doing the initial research, this was barely coming up, and I was like thinking in the back of my head, God, no one talk about compliance. No one talk about compliance. Let's knock it out of the top 5. And then it really started coming in. So compliance was the 3rd most prevalent trend with 25% of responses. And reasons for that is, for example, the GDPR is around, PSD2, PCI DSS, and also some of the stuff so I did a lot of the research, as I said, sort of February through April, and we wrote it in April, May, proofed it, and then got it pushed out in early June. These were before the intention to fines for BA and Marriott, so hence why there's that thing there about disappointment over lack of fines. However, there's that feeling compliance has also pushed better incident response practices, and also like an international impact, which the CCPA is the California Privacy Act. You might have sort of seen a bit of talk about that. It's pretty cool, actually. It's taking a lot of the influence, I would say, from GDPR. All right, number 4 is company and board engagement, and it's an area where the security team needs to be part of the business, really, and also they need to support the business and what the business does. So you're talking about business people in an immature market, that's cybersecurity being an immature market in their view. The discussion between the CEO and the board has changed. I think Brian said this morning, we've got the attention now of government, of law, of boards, of regulators. And actually, what do we do with that now? We've got their attention because, as Graham was saying, crowd of people I followed, it all hit the front pages, even when the arrest of someone hit the front page. And also measuring culture. Some of you, follow what we do, know that culture is a tricky one. You could sort of say, where's the value in that? Well, I will say, look at before buying Kairoa's company. We didn't actually find the number, and I was about an hour ago trying to still find out the amount they bought for them. But, we were able to put a dollar amount, wherever that dollar amount, probably $1 million plus, on actually having culture as part of your business strategy, really, and board awareness. Obviously, we talked about. Right, and the 5th and final one is automation. I was doing this B-Sides Belfast about 3 weeks ago, and someone said, automation, what do you mean by that? Aren't AI and machine learning the same, completely different? You can't put them in the same thing. And I'm like, oh, God, don't start that. So, AI and machine learning, I did. Sorry if you don't like that. But, as far as I'm concerned, they do sit in the same kind of silo, in the same kind of container, as it were. But maybe we'll see how things go if we do this again in 2020. How AI and machine learning, are they two so distinctly different things that the way things are moving that people will actually see it as two different things? Obviously, DevOps, DFIR, automation. Even though, actually, you can see on the right-hand side there's so much FUD on AI and machine learning in an immature market, even though it's a negative thing, it still was being cited as a trend, even though it's not kind of a hugely popular area that people want to talk about. So they were the top 5. So these came out in June, and so I've been talking around this for a little while. People sometimes say, can you compare 18 and 19? Well, the answer is probably no, because there were 32 people versus 60 people interviewed. There were different sets of people. Some of the people I talked to last year, I didn't talk to this year, just for various reasons, availability, etc. So, decision was to try and do something original. So if you want to kind of go like for like, it's probably not fair, but ultimately compliance is seen as less of a kind of a trend than last year. And the 5 lower trends then. So these were as following, yes, hygiene cloud, APT. APT was an interesting one because I thought this has been kind of dismissed by the security community as being very hype-driven kind of thing, but it really came up, actually. And I guess if you consider the state of the world, the ransomware being developed by nation states, the attacks, the interference kind of thing, then maybe it is being seen seriously. Malware, I did bundle ransomware into that. And agile transformation, that actually was, when I started doing this research, agile transformation was actually a really popular one, but it seemed to kind of dwindle away into 10th place. The single response trends, I like putting these in because these are just interesting to sort of see, what one person thought. You might look through those and go, I can't believe more people didn't say bug bounties. The AppSec people among you might say, I can't believe no one else said fuzzing. That's always fun in front of a CISO audience, and they go, and managed services as well, another one that's it's pretty popular. Just one more thing on this. I actually got this, I don't normally sort of go through who was talked to, a lot of people we do know, but I did get this from a chap called Ben Tom Have, Ben Falcon's View, now it's for Hilton, used to work for Gartner. He sent me this DM, and after it came out, and sort of said, rather surprised they weren't responsive about containers. So I thought, well, let's have a little look into the responses and see what people actually said about containers and how many talked about it. The answer was 2. Him and someone else, I think the other one was. These were some of the comments we got. A lot more bang for your buck. A lot more bang for your buck without security overheads. Adoption of container technologies as Kubernetes rapidly matures. Lightweight disposable virtual systems you don't have to manage and patch. Best to hold containers while they support. It's all positive. No one said negative about containers. Out 2 people, obviously, and holding containers barrier to migrating workloads between cloud providers, and also it lets me do that as well. So it's containers was an interesting one to put in, and like I said, I think you'd laugh at that. I get I've had a few people since saying, did anyone mention Brexit, for example? Did anyone talk about? Yeah, there you go. Came out from me. And I just thought, let's put that one out because, he specifically asked just as it came out. And, people often say, a few questions which I have addressed in some of the added slides. So that's kind of the main part of the research. But what I wanted to do was try and see how this is all very nice to sort of, we wrote about this and we pushed the report out, and I did some talks at Infosec and a few other places. But I thought what I wanted to try and do is see how these trends are actually being adopted by businesses, or not, as the case may be, and actually helping the next generation of people to come into the industry. We do a lot of sort of coverage at Infosecurity around helping new people come into the industry. It's all very well sitting going, there's a skills crisis and, no one's hiring. Well, maybe if you find the people who are out there trying to find a job, then, and they know what they're expecting, we kind of help bridge that gap. So we're quite interested in helping new people come into the industry and trying to do that kind of thing. So this is part of research I did, and I thought, let's try and find some people we can talk to. So as sort of a second leg of the research, I went off to find people who were in the first few years of their careers, still at university or on work placements. And so, I guess 25 and under, I suppose, but some, maybe a little bit older if that's just you start your career a bit late. It's about 50 plus, so almost actually in the end, almost got as many as I did with the original research. And asked them 7 questions based on the findings and asked them how these are affecting their skills, their training, and opportunities in work. And just a big shout out to Crest and Cybersecurity Challenge because they actually helped me they did some mail outs for me and got some people responding to it. So, 7 questions, and the first one then was quite simply, are you ready to deal with malware? This is because of the technology problems, especially around detection and those kind of issues. So I thought, if the next generation of people are seeing these stories about ransomware, like Raj was talking about, and are they confident actually that they can go into a business and say, right, let's start reverse engineering, for example. So there were the answers of the 53 who answered it. Obviously, slightly more majority were positive, and I'll just throw you some of the comments out. It's become more day to day. A lot of the responses were very much like, I've sort of taken an interest in this personally, and some of the negatives without experience. If you are training people, this is going to be a real way to sort of help people learn a little bit more, is to do sort of reverse engineering. And, I'm seeing the McAfee guys at the front here, I don't know where your situation was, but if, you were able to do this straight out the university or college, or even just do it on your own. Some people might just be interested in this sort of stuff. Covering all the bases, probably an impossible task. There was a bit of a trend of it being very much a team effort, and if you're able to actually run things on your own time as well, then that's going to be harder. And education so far has given me the knowledge in order to deal with these types of threats efficiently. These are all genuine quotes. I didn't make these up. These are actually quotes with people we actually talked to. And I'll give you a bit more information at the end as to where you can sort of read a bit more thoroughly. So that was obviously in reflection to the first trend of technology problems and detection, etc. The second one, there we go. Okay, I think I might have done that right. Anyway, the second one then, is now, obviously cloud wasn't a top 5 trend this year, but was last year. But we've seen so much around like Azure, AWS, and infrastructure as a service, especially in 2019, that actually this is now quite a significant trend, I think, for the whole industry. So I thought, let's ask the question, have you learned enough to actually work with these as a service options rather than your pretty standard network security? Pretty sort of harsh no, actually. This might just be because it is literally it does feel to me like an emerging trend. And if you're in university in a course that was maybe designed in 2017, for example, how up-to-date is that going to be as you come to graduate maybe next year or the year after to actually give you that training to work with IaaS, as it were. So, the training is available. The sort of feeling we got around training is it's out there. If you want to start looking around the internet, look at maybe even watch YouTube. There might be some YouTube videos on this kind of stuff. Things are out there and available. You need to know how they work. Unless you use it as part of a job role. It's tough, no doubt that. Personal research, again, much like with the malware one, if you're prepared to put the sort of the legwork in as a new person, or you're looking for people to hire, and they've done that personal research element, hopefully that's enough of a boost to make you feel actually this person's gone kind of the extra mile. And third question was compliance. And as I said, top finding last year, top third out of 5 this year. As a result, then, we see a lot of talk now, GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Are we seeing more demand for this in job ads? Do people need to know about compliance to actually be able to get a job now? So, for this one, kind of 50-50, almost slightly sort of veering on the 27, slightly higher. So yes, that's positive. Obviously, positive means that yes, I have, yes, I'm seeing this, etc. So just a few points. Discussion which is coming up more often. Some of the comments, especially sort of the more negative ones, where people just don't seem to be looking for them. Sort of maybe about half a dozen were we're seeing, I'm not really looking for a compliance job. Well, okay, a pen tester probably still needs to know about compliance frameworks. So, consider that if you are actually sort of thinking, I only want to work with, malware, for example, it's probably worth knowing about PCI and about actually the impact of ransomware upon that. A current job seeker, definitely see an increase. 70 to 80% of my job alerts are in this area. So compliance is a big one, and that's why we asked one more. Compliance is always mentioned for audit or forensics roles. Let's go to the next one then. So people were seeing these, but as I mentioned, GDPR is pretty prevalent. We're all pretty familiar with that, but do we know the ins and outs of it? Ditto PCI, ditto PSD2, ditto HIPAA, etc. So are you aware of the demands of what actually is required of them? And from that, I say 54 answers. We seem like a pretty clued up kind of next generation of people who seem to know what's going on. Plenty of guidance material. Media's been pretty good at picking up compliance because people want to talk about compliance and they want to read about it. But there's a lack of education around these. Again, this might just be a timing issue. It might be down to the fact that universities aren't really keeping up with the change in things like data protection laws, because it is all pretty new. Those of you remember, GDPR was now 18 months in. I'm not saying we don't care anymore, but we do care still a lot more. But are training capabilities there? Are they keeping up? I'm seeing more and more conferences now roll up, purely about data protection, and I don't know what the age demographic it goes to these things are. And yeah, I've not heard of PSD2. If you haven't heard of PSD2, there is some magazines edition hanging around. I saw a couple on that row over there. If you go to the blue cover, it's my article on PSD2. Oop, little plug. So yeah, if you want to read about that, payment services, I can't remember the services standard. Thank you, thanks, Brian. Have you all heard that? PSD2. This was a bit of a difficult one that was kind of held up for some issues around different things, but yeah, worth looking into that one. Right, next one. Now, obviously, two things there have been compliance and cloud. So, if you don't have these things and you haven't been prepared or you haven't put the extra work in, are you going to go into a job on day one and they're going to sort of say, right, what have you got? And you're like, I didn't have time to do it. Well, actually, is it up to the job to actually train you? And the answer is obviously going to be, pretty heavily yes. Still 13 out of the 50 board actually did say no. They'd only do it if there's a business requirement to actually to train this. I think kind of a few of the this kind of sums it up. A lot of the responses really companies won't pay for training if they don't have to, and any job to provide training to help employees grow in areas that will benefit them. And I think it's the penultimate one. Bit of a bugbear that still obviously affects a lot of the career tracks in cybersecurity is the job ads that are posted. We've all had conversations about HR and how they demand certain levels of expectation because they have to tick the boxes of what people need to have to get the job. So, are they requiring unachievable levels of experience and qualifications? Obviously, fits in with the research we see, especially with ISC Squares came out a couple of weeks ago saying there's now 4 million is now the skills gap globally. So from that, 31 out of the 54, isn't it, said with a positive response. They often require degrees. Degrees are great. Universities are doing a great job, but if that's your only pool is to look for people who actually have got that level of education, it's a bit of a limit, which is a shame. Recruiters don't really know what they want or need. And especially, this is kind of summarised it really. Want to be cyber ninjas out of uni and pay them entry-level wages. I did all these interviews for this particular section all anonymously. I said, I didn't want to sort of go shaming anybody who was responding. I don't remember a few off the top of my head, but I generally wanted to make these anonymous so people could say things like that and not have to worry about, ruining their entire career before they've even started it. So, that's a great comment. And I don't know if there's another. No. This is the last question then. So obviously board engagement was in our top 5. And also board awareness had been in the top 5 last year. So have communication and presentation skills been taught or encouraged to a level that you're comfortable with? I think 28 to 25, so what's that, 48, 53. Again, very much split down the middle there, actually, about people. I think that's a personal thing. I think some people are very naturally quite capable of speaking on stage. Hopefully things like hacking societies and local B-side event and IrisCon now, and all other things are giving the opportunities for new people to come in. But if you're not getting the opportunity to do it, are you going to be able to go up to your CEO and explain why you're not vulnerable to Heartbleed as an example, or Blue Keep is probably a better example. So just a few comments. Hasn't been taught. A lot of emphasis on these abilities and be able to comfortable to present and communicate, and also hopefully that's the kind of thing conducting a professional manner and communicate to is vital in any organisation. So these were I think that's the last of the 7 then. So what I'm actually doing is I'm writing an article on each one of these questions every week. I think the 3rd one is going up tomorrow. I can't remember exactly which one it is, where I use a lot more of these comments. They're all free to read. These questions are free to read, so that goes up tomorrow. And, hopefully gives you a bit more insight into what sort of the answers are rather than just these short comments. So just kind of a few takeaways of the overall research then. So detection remains a large issue, but people feel comfortable dealing with malware. It's not something that's a major problem it seems for the next generation. Compliance, people are aware of it. even though it wasn't top 5, cloud never present. And I think, just believe the hype on automation because it's not going away. So, if you want to download the original report, which says it's on the website, white papers, you have to go back to about the 6th of June, I think is when it was actually came out. If you want to follow me, that's my email, that's our Twitters. If you want links to any of the articles or anything, then just at me on Twitter. I'm sitting in here for the rest of the afternoon. I've got about 3 minutes. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to be shouted at otherwise, because, I'm going to be sticking around. But I just want to say, just follow up what Gordon said, actually. I came to IrisCon in 2012 for the first time. I watched people like Rick Ferguson and Neera Jones and Brian and Phoenix speak, and hey, I got to do it today. So thanks very much, and I'm going to go get Guinness.